Thank you so much, and thank you all. I, um, I'm very happy that I can do this live to you. Hopefully, that will allow us some interaction. I feel very honored to be a part of this meeting, and I very much thank the organizers for giving the opportunity to show some of our work. The title of my presentation is Pathways to Improve Food and Nutrition Security for the Poor, focusing on African indigenous foods and technologies. And this is work commissioned by the Netherlands Organization for Scientific Research, especially the branch of WOTRO, Science for Global Development. My name is Sijmen Schoustra. I work at the University of Zambia and also at Wageningen University in the Netherlands. And well, we all know what local and indigenous foods are, and especially we know that many of these are staples or vegetables, fruits, dairy. And we've also seen in this meeting that they have a great potential to promote food and nutrition security, especially in Africa. These foods are culturally embedded, which means that people know of them and also that they are in general widely accepted, and also that they have the potential for food systems diversification. However, as we have also already seen in this meeting, in this conference, is these foods are also underutilized. And that has to do with the fact that production and also so large scale production is usually not well known how to achieve that. Processing of raw materials may not have been optimized, and also aspects of entrepreneurship and value chains have not been developed as they could have. So for this reason, NWO has set up a food and business research program, which was funded by the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they have put in place what they call the Global Challenges Program and Applied Research Fund. It's a series of research projects that have all sort of revolved around the aim to promote local indigenous foods and crops, and to unlock traditional knowledge and technologies, and really to look at the local food on the plate of local farmers and communities. And out of all these studies, NWO has commissioned a synthesis study, and that is what I will present now. So we have tried to sort of get some overarching insight on all these research projects combined. So let me talk about one specific project that was done under this program. That is the one I've been personally involved with, which was on local fermented foods in Zambia, where we looked at products made from maize, millet, and sorghum, and also milk, a bit outside the scope of this meeting perhaps. But we looked at products that are made by local processing of fermentation. So we look at maheu, munkoyo, chibwantu. These are all fermented products, fermented beverages that are quite common in Southern Africa, and they all have a slightly different name in many countries. So what are traditional fermented foods? Well, so fermentation, what does it do? It causes a transformation of raw materials by microbes to safe foods. And this is a low-cost technology which increases the nutritional and commercial value of these raw materials that are used. Also, this way of processing is culturally embedded, and it presents many opportunities for entrepreneurship and livelihoods. However, also as we have seen for local foods in general, also these traditional fermented foods are underutilized. And what we were looking for in our project is if we could see if sort of processing and value addition could kind of link primary production to more nutritious foods and also livelihoods. So in that way, traditional fermented foods are a means to connect these two. And in Zambia, we looked at traditional fermentation of a fermented milk or cereal, so mostly also cereal, that are widely produced in rural areas and that all age groups consume. So we're not looking at alcoholic products, but more sour products that everyone consumes. They are made by uncontrolled fermentation, and we looked at aspects of nutrition and food safety. Here you see a few images to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So you see a lady with a calabash. This is where fermentation takes place, and you see below ladies selling at the local market. And more what we have been seeing is that local cooperatives and farmer associations are also taking on processing. So then what we sort of came up with out of our project, and we're now doing a follow-up on this, is that we are going to use fermented foods to promote food and nutrition security. We are basically looking at various aspects that are all interconnected. So we have to take into account the consumer. What are the needs and wishes of that consumer? Then to meet those, we have to adopt processing practice that can address those needs, which lead to some product functionality that we look in the product. It has to be safe. It has to have a certain taste, certain consistency. This has bearings on nutrition and health. What is the nutritional composition? And also fermented foods contain bacteria that promote gut health and in that way general health. And then these foods are produced mainly by women at a small scale. And what is their entrepreneurial context that they operate in? And how does that connect to value chains that then sort of connect the producer and the consumer? So this is the main gist of our project. And now getting back to the synthesis study that was commissioned. So various projects have addressed this type of questions. And in the synthesis study, we actually identified 3 types of benefits of using indigenous foods and technologies. And these include social benefits, economic benefits, and environmental benefits. And I will sort of go through them one by one. So social benefits of local foods. So why would we consider local foods? Well, first of all, they're healthy and nutritious and are affordable usually for a wide range of consumers, including the poor. They can be a means to empower producers and processors to connect to formal markets, or even in informal markets, it can give them a higher status. This is also about traditional knowledge and cultural identity. This is not to be underestimated. Giving sort of room for traditional knowledge and cultural identity also raises the self-esteem and the feeling of purpose of many people, which in the wide sense promotes development and livelihoods. There are some challenges to achieve social benefits, and the main ones are the lack of knowledge on specific products. So what is the nutritional value of a local food? We usually don't exactly know. And why is that a problem? Well, that means that local foods cannot be used in programs because we can't model their effects. We don't know how much micronutrients they possess, or vitamins, or calories. And also processing practice has not been optimized. And that is also a challenge. So the studies that we have looked at have, for instance, documented the macro and micronutrients of over 300 edible plants and vegetables. So this is really important information that can be used to show, look, these foods are nutritious. Here is how nutritious they exactly are. And also we have modeled impact on diets. To give you an example of this from our own work, again on the Zambian fermented foods, we have modeled how adding the 2 foods that we looked at, mabisi and munkoyo, how they would contribute to diets and the composition of diets. You see 2 graphs here for 2 age groups, 1 to 3-year-old and 4 to 5-year-old. And you see a bunch of bars. And the bars in, let's say, the black ones, to focus on that, are if we would have current local foods and we would add this mabisi, this fermented food, to diets. And you can see that these bars are higher. And even if we add munkoyo, which is the sort of the striped bar next to it, we also see that it has an impact on certain groups of nutrients. So here we were able to show that adding a mabisi, which is just 1 serving per day, can really help to get better diets. Then some economic benefits of local foods. Well, this is about entrepreneurship and livelihoods. So we have seen that this processing and marketing will help. It leads to higher and more regular income of current processors. And also it gives opportunities for collaboration and improved value chain governance. Like processors get a say in these value chains, especially if they also form cooperatives, associations, or networks, or whatever you want to call them. So they become an active player with a say in these value chains. That's a very important one. Well, here as well, some challenges that we identified is processing standards. and lack of certification. So if products are not allowed on the formal market just because they have not been approved by local authorities as being safe, that is an issue. And well, there's an example of improved processing of vegetable drying and some plant-based infant formula of Benin where we could make standards. And very briefly, also in our project, we could sort of show in these traditional fermented foods that the microbiological safety is high. What we did is we assessed survival of pathogens, and this graph to the right is meant to give you some evidence that we have actually done proper experiments. But what the main message is that fermentation suppresses pathogens from proliferating and surviving. And this now has led the Zambia Bureau of Standards to work towards approval of local foods, even if they are based on raw materials that are not pasteurized. So then there's one thing to really keep in mind: how, when we sort of upscale value chains, how are we going to keep the current processors in charge? I think that's a very key point that we need to really consider. Then finally, these environmental benefits. Well, local crops and local varieties usually require lower natural resource, have lower natural resource requirements. And they promote, if we have variety, they promote agrobiodiversity, like genetic diversity, and that can strengthen climate resilience, but also pest resilience and resilience in general. So what now? Way forward. Well, we should actively incorporate local foods into policy. And to do that, we need to collect some basic info. It's not like rocket science, but we need to collect basic information on those foods. What makes them nutritious, and how can they exactly contribute? And there's need for promotion and sensitization. I think that's another point that was already raised at this conference. Then some things to really think about is who will benefit from formalization, upscaling, and commercialization. I think it should be the local processors who are now processing should be in the center here. And who owns this traditional knowledge? I think these are some questions that we really need to consider. Well, this brings me to the end of my presentation. So I spoke to you about improved nutrition security on the poor, focusing on indigenous foods and technologies. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention.